Paradise Engineer, and again, another video. This time, I wanted to do something fun. Last time I was a little bit frustrated, and I wrote something a little bit out of frustration, something informative, I'm sure. But this one is going to be much shorter, and something I've been thinking about since I wrote a second book, and I want to talk about it a little bit. And it's a little bit of a speculative piece to try to describe what would an economy look like when everything is fully automated, when value chains and supply chains are completely automated, because we're going towards that reality. As far as productivity is concerned, there's going to be a point where human beings are just going to be in the way. Automation, AI will just be too competent and too capable at producing out of natural resources with low energy and low costs, so that companies will just won't want humans to be in the way. And some companies, like including Amazon and others, are already in that mindset now because people are expensive, and so we have an economy that for the longest time has been adding tools to itself to increase productivity. So we are at the center of the productivity cycle. And we are also the consumers, because that's why we build things, because we need to consume. We need food, we need shelter, we need luxuries, and we need all these things. So that's why we produce things. It's not because the economy needs it. No, it's because we need it. We need to buy things, and these things need to be available. They need to be produced, and we are the primary manual labor towards making that happen. But in the next 20 odd years or so, there's going to be a lot of supply chains that will be completely automated. No humans allowed, because we would be a hindrance to productivity. And there's going to be a point, it could be within the next 20, 30 years, by my count, including a lot of creative things like surgery, art, engineering, complex, programming, complex creative jobs that are highly technical will also be more efficient and productive if it's AI and robotics that handle that. Therefore, we're all going to be out of a job, at least a job that serves as part of the economy to cycle money through and from one hand to another. Because right now, that's what the economy is about. It's we need people to work, we get salaries, and that's how we get our money to buy things that are produced. So it's always been about, for the longest time, a system of designed to redistribute the produced goods fairly. So if people helped more or had more value in the production of the resources, were allowed to consume more of it. That's because they were paid more. That's a value proposition, right? If you do work that is more valuable to individuals, have more responsibilities, then you get more money, which means you get to consume more of what's being produced. Now, in this future where people are in the way of all these jobs, including the high-level ones, where does the money come from for consumption? Like, how do people actually buy things? If you're not working, you're not receiving money. If you're not receiving money, you're not buying things. So why would companies even produce things, even though it's completely automated, right? If there's no money to be made. So there's this whole different way of thinking, that we have to realize, and we have to design a new economy that's based on something completely different, where the people are not needed, or should not be, the requirement for them to have a purchasing power should not be them involved in the production, because it makes no sense for us to be inefficiently re-injected into the economy as producers and managers of natural resources, if AI and robotics are able to do it much more efficiently. So, what is our place in the economy? Well, our place will forever be consumers. That's why we created this way of equitably distributing the goods and services that we produce, is to try to have a redistribution of these things in a fair way. We still want to redistribute the goods that are available for consumption in a fair way, but we just have to determine what is this other fair way besides the production of it. And that's just a decision that needs to be made. It's not, we don't need to contort or twist the economy very much. We just have to choose, okay, the criteria is going to be different. So if I want to be altruistic, and I am, I tend to want to be altruistic and being nice, I think all life has meaning and has value. And everyone that is living in the society contributes value in the society, and our ancestors have contributed to build the society that we have today. So all of us should survive, should be able to consume at least the basic goods and services that will allow us to be happy and survive. So the kind of a basics kind of thing. And I've talked about this quite a bit, including, I believe, like 2 weeks ago when I talked about universal or unconditional basic income. That's a bridge towards what I'm talking about now. What I'm talking about here is like, okay, well, what do we decide is a criteria for us to be able to consume? So how much money should we receive from some source so that we can consume? Like there's the UBI kind of concept of, well, let's give everybody a certain basic minimum so that we can cover our bases and avoid problems, because problems cost more money than a preventative measure like UBI and whatnot. So there's that. But I think we can build something if we project into the future, knowing that everything will basically be automated and controlled by companies. And we can just decide, well, instead of just trying to go to the basics, let's do one step a little bit further. Let's care about the environment, because really, again, the core element of an economy is the redistribution of natural resources and its transformation to consumables. And then, of course, after it's consumed, there's this whole economy around surrounding waste and going back in the environment. So we can certainly decide, well, the amount of money that is being distributed in a nation could be limited by the amount of natural resources we're willing to extract from it. Okay, so that means if we want to protect the environment, we want to make sure that there's no further harm to the environment, then there's a certain limit of natural resources that we would be willing to extract, either within the nation or imported from other nations, to kind of create a status quo with the environment. That could be a decision, a fundamental decision on how to structure an economy. And then you'd have a government entity or any kind of consensus-based system, because the government is basically a population represented by an entity. So let's just say the government for now, as a centralized entity, would make calculations using all sorts of systems and analysis and whatnot. Like, this is the total amount of money that should be redistributed to the population for their use, free use, and consumption, to buy things from the supply chain, because companies want the money. They build all the infrastructure. The owners that are still in the system, they're owning the companies, right? No more employees are in there. They want to have something from their effort. Like, they want to have some kind of compensation that is a little bit over and beyond something basic, because they did achieve something that is very useful to the rest of us. That's all fair. So we'd all receive a certain amount of money based on that limit that would be basically environmental based, as an example. And these amounts, based on consensus and agreement with the population, could vary depending on different people's needs. Like people that have certain handicaps, maybe they would be able to receive more. People that have more difficulty with their health and so on. Like, we can vary certain things like that. It's easy to input here universal health care, which would have certain individuals using more than others. So that's more money spent on them than others. A free education, which would be great. Free internet for everybody, so everybody's connected and well informed, and so on. These are all decisions that could be done collectively, and it would vary the amount of money or resources on a basic level that would be provided for as a redistribution of natural resources and whatnot to the population. Now, once you have that set up, then population would obviously buy from the supply chain, so the companies that are providing all these products and services, just like we have now, just there's nobody being employed in there, and we consume. That's our job. Human jobs would be to consume. That's our part in the environment, and we would be limited overall by the amount that would be determined in the first place to not harm the environment, as an example. And if someone wants to work, because they, like I described in an article called I believe that's the future of work in 2040 or something like that. I put the link in the article that I wrote, which is linked below as well. Some people will want to be served or have a product done by a human being. There would be a demand also for people. That's always going to be the case. If there's a demand, somebody is going to want to offer to that demand out of pleasure, joy, or for compensation. That's fine. So volunteering versus working as a consultant. That's the amount of people that would be involved in such things for pay would be somewhat limited, because there's so much superior efficiency and productivity with the AI and virtual and whatnot. But there will be a demand for people to be involved, and people will get paid. And so this whole new, not new, but this whole different layer of trade that happens. So if, for example, I receive a certain amount of money that I can spend any way I want, based on my status, my health status, for example, and what we decide for the environment and whatnot, and I don't need to use it all, well, I can spend it on whatever I want. I can trade with somebody else, right? So there's all this trading can happen. It can look very professional, like consultants helping each other. It could be just donations, whatever. I mean, the trade can happen just like it's happened here. Offer and demand wins. It's a free market. Same with the companies that are providing all this automation. I mean, it doesn't look anything different than what we have now. It's not. There are no employees behind the doors. They're still working. They're still competing to offer us the best price possible, and that's great, because if they are competing to win our dollars, right? Because there's a cash flow that goes through here, then we get innovation, we get lower prices, more product services that are more ecological, perhaps. Because if they do that, they know that we get essentially more money to spend, and that's money that we can spend also on those companies and so on and so forth. So innovation would go in the right direction in those cases, and that would be great. So we would basically build a world that is very similar to what we have now, as far as how the shopping and goods are passed along. Government is not involved any more than it is now, probably even less. But instead of individuals having to work to live, or having programs to kind of support those that can't, and making it super complicated, we just say, like, no, look, if you want to work, that's extra. You do whatever you want, but everybody basically gets, a share of what we should be producing out of the natural resources. Now, an alternative to that, which I actually prefer, is because it has this nice dynamic as far as regulation and more population, people controlling their own fate, is instead of a natural resource extraction kind of point of view, then what we could do is that we could decide as a nation that the land of the nation is owned by the collective population as a whole. And this could be managed, of course, has to be managed by a government or something like that, just to be able to control it, because you can't have an individual control it. So you have lots of the digital systems and AI and whatever, but controlled by an entity or ministry of the government, just to make sure it's kind of accountable and controlled by experts. And what would happen is that if I or a company wants to do something on the land, then the collective, like the citizens, lease the land to the individual. So if I want to have a large parcel of land, I'm going to pay more, and that goes into the fund. and that those amounts that go into the funds, they are circled back and redistributed to the population. And so if you live in the nation, then you're contributing into the cash flow, and the money eventually goes back to you. So those that use less, they spend less, and that's good for the environment. The main benefit of this kind of system is that the collective, the population, because they own the land, we get to decide what kind of leases are given to individuals and companies. So if we can force companies to do things in a certain way, and if they don't behave according to the lease agreement, if you will, according to the terms that we gave them this land for that particular reason, then we can have legal terms to take the land back, for example, or to force some penalties and so on. So to be like the nation's people, the land of the people, but nobody really owns the land. It's everybody's land, and we are shepherds of it. We take care of it as a collective, and we take decisions about it on our own. And that would be another way to kind of create another different kind of cash flow dynamic, which is also redistributed to the population so that we can spend to buy whatever we need. And then at the other level, beyond the basic level, people can trade to get more. So you want more luxuries? Well, okay, you got to do some services. You got to do something extra that is of value to others, where they would be willing to spend some money on whatever you're doing instead of buying food and whatever else they want to do. So basically, free market, minimal government, and everybody's taken care of, and there's no requirement to work to live. And that's something we have to go towards, because we know AI and automation will break the current economy, where people are kind of forced to either forced to work to survive, or they have to be stuck in some program that desperately tries to get you back to work, and it's not working very well. These systems tend to have a lot of holes. They tend to discourage work in many cases, because if you do manage to work, then you get the benefits stripped off, and they're very hard to get into. So if you start working and that doesn't work out, then it's hard to get back onto the program in many cases. So there's a significant amount of people that just don't look for work because they're concerned about survival. If they work, they may lose their means of survival. It's very sad, but that's the way it is. But if we restructure things in the way I'm describing, there's a lot of ways to go about it that would be interesting. Then nobody's worried about survival, because everybody's got at least something equal to others, so that we can they can survive. And then whatever activities they develop beyond that can be traded as part of this free market, in exchange for whatever extra money. There's a certain, just like it is now, there's a certain amount of money that is available, that is printed, if you will. We still print, but at some point we'll probably stop printing. It's all going to be digital, but still it's going to be like issuance of amounts of money. There's a limited amount of money that is in circulation, basically. It's the same thing in that new scenario. We just decide what triggers an increase or decrease on what is available. And that's a decision we can all make. And that's it. And we can move into the golden age where people don't need to work for a living. Okay, that's it for now, and hope this gives you some thought, and I'm hoping that this is going to start some new discussions on the topic, and we can engineer a future together by imagining new ways to do things that are better and more and healthier for our society. Ciao for now, and I'll probably talk to you again in about 2 weeks when I have another article out. Bye for now.